Mātinitini, the Social, Cultural and Economic Committee I tēnei rā. Tēnā whakamoeho mai ki ta au ki teitahi kai tohutohu manapori rānei, meina ka wihi koe ai te hui. A te haurua ai te taku kāraka 10:30 ka te kai timo o te ata. Welcome everybody to today's Social, Cultural and Economic Committee. Morning tea will be at 10:30 am. Would you please join me in saying the karakia? Whakataka te kau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei, Māori ora. E whakataka koutou ana au ai te motini, I move the motion that the Kōrau Mātinitini Social, Cultural and Economic Committee accept the apologies from Councillor McNulty for absent and Councillor Wineta for lateness. Councillors, do we have any further apologies? Mā wai te tautoko, do I have a seconder? Councillor Paul. E nāne ka pōtitia te motini, I now put the motion which has been moved and seconded. Kua mana, I am assuming that has carried. Conflict of interest. I call on members to declare any conflict of interest that may have been in relation to items on the agenda. Are there any conflicts of interest? No? Grand. Confirmation of minutes. He whakataka koutou ana au ai te motini, I move the motion that we approve the minutes of the previous Kōrau Mātinitini meeting held on the 31st of August and that there be a true record of the meeting. Mā wai te tautoko, do I have a seconder? Councillor Matthews, thank you. E nāne ka pōtitia te motini, I now put the motion which has been moved and seconded. Councillor Calvert. Kua mana, that has carried. Thank you all. Right, over to public participation. Yep, cool. There are no items not on the agenda. We will move on to public participation next. No, Dr. Graham Sharp. Welcome, Graham. Welcome, Graham and friends.
Nā ringa o te whake maturangi. The many hands of te whaka maturangi make light work when in unison. You know, as a long-term Wellingtonian and looking out the window today, what a beautiful city we have, but it's unfortunately true that there are many people in our community who need help from other quarters, and that is why we are here today. My name is Graham Sharp. I am a recently retired anaesthetist of 43 years practice, and may I acknowledge at this point Councillor Sarah Free, whose father was my initial tutor when I began my anaesthetic training. Oh. For some time it's been apparent to many in the medical community that there are people in Wellington who need medical help who aren't getting it, and in particular in the realms of surgery. 3 years ago, a group of general practitioners got together to look at this, and out of a wider population of 350,000, some initial work by them, building on the work done in Christchurch, suggests that there's about 10% of the population who would benefit from surgery but don't have access to that surgery these days. So we're looking at somewhere around 30,000 people in the first instance, and this has been well researched by our Christchurch colleagues. You may have heard of the charity hospital in Christchurch with Dr. Phil Bagshaw and his team, and they have published several times about the unmet surgical need in the community. Now, we're not talking about the major big surgeries that we, like heart surgery, cancer surgery, trauma surgery. But we're talking about everyday problems that people have that can be helped by surgery or even cured by surgery. But unfortunately, these people are having difficulty getting access to the public hospital surgery lists. And this problem has got worse over the last 3 years with COVID and all that's been involved. Now, just to emphasise on that, until I retired in April, I was one of the medical directors at Wellington Public Hospital, and I was actually one of the directors of surgery, and I was in charge of the operating theatres. And what with COVID and staff shortages, we were cancelling one operating theatre a day, and my colleague who's taken over from me tells me that they are now cancelling 2 operating theatres a day. The people who are missing out are people with things that may not impact on their length of life, but can and do impact on their ability to live well and to look after families, to live independently and to work. So these are things like cataract surgery, hand surgery, people with hand surgery. For instance, we've heard of a lady who's a music teacher who has a condition in one of her hands and has been waiting to have that attended to surgically for some 18 months and is unable to do so. Cataract surgery in people, it's usually relatively straightforward for somebody to get a single cataract operation in the public system. The difference between having 1 cataract done and 2 cataracts done is, for instance, the ability to drive a car, the ability to live alone. My mother had that. She lives in Christchurch, but a few years ago she had her first cataract done and we had to organise for the second one. Now, a lot of these smaller surgeries are done in the private system, but that requires finance and or medical insurance, and for many people that's just beyond their ability to pay. And this is not just people reliant on benefits or people with community services card. People in single income families with salaries of 80, 90,000 a year, they're going to find it difficult, if not impossible, to pay for private medical insurance. So the people who actually deal with this are not surgeons and anaesthetists, it's the general practitioners in our community. They send these patients for surgical opinions, and the patients are referred back to them saying, well, this can't or won't be done in the public sector, and we return these people to your care. But what can a GP do about somebody who needs surgery of the hand? What can a GP do about a cataract? Basically nothing. So the general practitioners approached those of us in the specialist community, and within a relatively short time, I had 42 surgeons and anaesthetists offering to provide this type of surgery free if we could provide premises and facilities. So for the last 3 years, that's what we've been about, and we now are in a position where we have a building site in Adelaide Road that we are in the process of getting engineering and architecture and so on, and we are looking to build a facility there in association with some other medical facilities to provide 2 operating theatres for day surgery and to look to alleviate some of this workload. The medical staff, surgeons, anaesthetists will provide their services free. We will have some paid nurses, but we also have nurses, anaesthetic technicians, people like that willing to do this work for free. So today we are here to introduce ourselves and to publicly announce this to Council. We have had the opportunity to speak to Her Worship the Mayor, thank you for your interest, and a number of councillors have spoken and met with us. I know that we're on restricted time, so that's pretty brief, but I'm just going to stop there in case anyone wishes to ask me or my colleagues anything.
No, thank you, Dr. Graham Sharp. We've got 3 parti, the first one, Councillor Pennant.
Thank you, that sounds amazing, and that's incredibly kind and generous of you. I'm just wondering what conversations you've had with government, because in a way this is a response to the failure of the public health system, and will they support you?
We have made a point of not having conversations with government or political parties. We see ourselves as a charitable organisation standing outside but alongside public and private health providers. It is our aim to be independent of government. We have, of course, spoken to individual politicians on an ad hoc basis, but we have not formally approached government, if that's what your question is. Again, as regards the administration at Wellington Public Hospital, we have their moral support, if you like, but we have no formal association with them in any administrative sense. Does that answer your question?
Sorry, how will you fund the building then?
Well, we're going to be going for public fundraising. We've spoken to and are currently in conversation with potential funders, and we've already had a lot of generous support. Just the engineering, the architecture, the legal work, all of that to some extent has cost money. Our legal and accounting fees have been zero, but you know, architects and people, even though they're providing this at a very cut rate, we still have expenses, ongoing expenses.
Question from Councillor Calvert.
Thank you for coming in again. And when we met, we talked about what our council could do, knowing that it was a regional facility, and being a bit presumptuous, looked at whether there could be a possibility if we as a council were going to contribute, and we do contribute to a lot of social issues for our city, whether there could be an agreement with the other councils in the region where we all would contribute on the basis of our population. So if we...
Councillor Calvert, could you get to the question?
Yeah. Yep. So, but I needed to provide some background because you haven't heard this either. So have you had any feedback from other councils?
Only informally, but we're going to be meeting with councillors, councillors and mayors from around the region. We decided to approach Wellington City Council first, and we wanted to not get too involved in that before the general election.
Yep.
And later on October, early November, we're moving out, and our coverage area we anticipate as being roughly the same as the Wellington Free Ambulance. So that's up the coast to Kapiti and includes the Wairarapa.
Cool. Councillor Chung, question.
Thanks very much, Doctor. I've actually had a briefing from my good friend and colleague, Councillor Brown, but he didn't have all the details. I've just recently had a cataract operation.
Councillor Chung, if we could just get to
and so,
we have limited.
So I asked the surgeon what was actually required to do this, and he said that he didn't think it was the facilities that they were short of, but getting the surgeons and people in there to do the work. So do you see it as that as being a better solution?
We see the provision of a facility as important. In fact, without a facility, we don't think this will work. What you've described has been done to some extent in other parts of New Zealand, particularly Hamilton and Auckland, but it ends up being a very ad hoc, adding patients onto here and there, whereas in Christchurch, for instance, and now just beginning in Invercargill, a facility with its own operating theatres, they find they can actually target this much better.
I see. Thank you.
Righto. Thank you, Doctor, for coming in to have the time to chat with us today. Really appreciate you coming to have a chat.
Thank you, everybody, for your interest and your attention.
Oh my, thank you. Councillors, we have no more people on the public participation speaking list, but we do have a petition coming up as item 2.1. And this will be Nau Mai Rona Carson from the Newtown Residents Association to speak briefly to the petition being presented. Nau Mai. Kia ora, feel free to sit at the table.
Thank you.
Now, understanding orders, when people are coming to speak to a petition, they get no more than 5 minutes. So if you're happy with that, and I can always allow for further time if we have extra interest in questions.
Thank you for that. And of course, I'm joined with my fellow association member and Kōrau Park neighbour, Steve Cosgrove. Last time we were here on the 31st of August, we were making the case for toilets in Kōrau Park. And of course, this time we're here to talk to the presentation of the petition that we had going. The petition was open for 2 weeks, and at that time it got 392 signatures, which we thought was pretty impressive. But that's only a fraction of the people who use the park and will benefit from it, if in fact the toilets are granted. Now, I was really positive to see that the council officers have added investigation of these toilets to the community facilities plan, and we're really confident that it'll stand up to all the investigations and assessments that are necessary. And then, of course, there's a question of budget. There is a thing in the community facilities plan that one of the reasons why you might proceed with an action that wasn't already funded was community need and community demand for it. So just, draw that to your attention. But we are very excited at the thought that we might finally get this so important facility for our park. And we would hate to have to wait years while a lot of investigation and consideration went on. So we do hope there's a way of doing this speedily. I don't know if you've all been to our park, but if you haven't, do come. It's a real hidden gem and behind the residential streets in the middle of residential Newtown. It's got a great playground provided by the council and barbecues and so on, which were funded by community contributions from a nearby development. And to have the full range of facilities and make it an enjoyable, sort of hygienic place to visit and eat food in would be something we've looked forward to for a long time. So that's me. I don't know if Steve wants to add a word.
If you come to visit the park and you need to, you're welcome to come across the road and use our whalepako.
Kia ora, Steve and Rona. Thank you very much. We have a Pātai Councillor Abdurrahman.
So just to make it clear for other audiences, you've been fighting for this since 1995?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. And what was the response in 2020 when the barbecue was put there?
Well, just before that, there was the playground upgrade, and everyone, or an awful lot of us, submitting on how the playground should be, said, and we need toilets, and we need toilets. Well, first of all, the budget was just for the play equipment, but also the council did a community safety study, which in fact they didn't discuss with us. I didn't even really realise until quite a lot later that had come back saying that because it was a somewhat secluded spot and there had been a history of people hanging out there and maybe undesirables, that they would say wouldn't recommend it. I think we could have countered that even at that stage. But now the whole thing's changed because there's this new apartment block right next door, and the whole thing's been opened up, so it's not secluded in the way it used to be. And of course, there are lots more people using it.
Can you walk us through how far other toilets are from Carrara Park? Is that ideal to walk with children to other nearby toilets?
Well, there's nothing truly nearby. There are public toilets in Newtown Park, over by the zoo, several streets away, and also at the playground by the by the Newtown Library, which again, more than 500 metres away. Even if it was just sort of down the street, once you're there having a barbecue, packing up your whole family and heading off to the toilet, probably in a hurry, makes it really tricky. So of course people do, which is, well, if they've got small children, they go behind a bush or whatever's available, which doesn't seem something that we want to continue with.
If they have older people needing the toilets, they will not come back because you have to pack everything up anyway just to go that distance.
Righto. Councillors, any further questions of the petitioners? No? Well, thank you, Rona and Steve, for that activism that you do for the community of Newtown, and this has been a long time coming, so really appreciate you coming to talk to us again.
Thank you.
Kia ora.
Thanks very much. And please support it.
No mai Christine Ford ki te hora o te korero. Please welcome Christine Ford and Jacqueline Murray to introduce the report. Oh, Paul Andrews. I had Jacqueline's looking good today. Cool.
Morena.
Morning, councillors. Do you want me to speak?
Well, just to start off by thanking Rona and the petitioners, and we'll take this paper as read, and it has been considered in the context of Te Awe Māpara, which we're presenting to councillors on the 23rd of November for consideration for adoption, and that's because Te Awe Māpara is replacing the public conveniences policy. But any questions?
He pātai me utu ai mua e tau patu. We have a first pātai from Councillor Young.
So, thank you. So, bearing in mind we have financial issues, and it also, obviously, public lavatories are an essential. Has any thought been put into going back to the old spend a penny, like, you know, paying for public lavatories, as they do in a lot of cities around the world?
It has come up from time to time, and council considering charging. It's not something we've ever supported or promoted. I think we want to make public toilets accessible to all in our community.
But wouldn't it be better than no public lavatory?
I suspect the method of kind of recovering a charge would probably outweigh, or the ability to cost recovery would outweigh any real benefit, would be my initial response to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think it is in the paper, but just remind me, how much does it cost to put in a lavatory? Both two, and the annual cost of running them?
Yeah, so it's probably, it depends very much on the site, and councillors are always kind of a little bit astounded by the cost of installing public toilets, but in reality you're building a standalone building that needs all the normal services that you need for a house, and so that's why the site influences very much the cost. How far away is sewage, where have you got power, where have you got water, so you can spend a bit of money having those services. The first thing you need to do is, depending on the site, look at what's the most feasible location to build it. And as Rona has pointed out, where you locate a public toilet from a safety perspective is a really important consideration. So that's part of it. And then these are assets that get a fair bit of wear and tear. Some of it is sadly vandalism. So they need to be really well constructed. And we expect them to last at least 30 years. So we've tried that they need to be accessible as well. So there are some costs to that. So the range is probably, depending on the site, between 300 and 400,000 for probably a standard 2-cubicle toilet. We generally do 2 cubicles because often one might be out of action due to vandalism, sadly. So if we want to ensure we can provide a toilet there, we will build 2. 2 also kind of future-proofs us a little bit with future demand or growth. The cost is around 45,000 per year to clean, maintain, repair, and obviously pay the interest and depreciation on that asset.
I would suggest to Councillor Young this would be a change to the fees and user charges policy, if that's something you're looking into. Creative. Right, I've got Councillor Abdurrahman.
So, thank you for this, Paul. And pre-2020, when the park was just upgraded, there was a research that been done regards to the crime in the area. And after that, new housing is built, and that is not an issue anymore. If at the time that was the reason behind it, the rationality why you do that is just, okay, maybe that's why you don't want to do it. But now, if that is not in place, isn't an ideal time to act on it?
I think, as I said, the safety considerations of how we locate any public toilet is a key consideration. We would agree with the Resident Association that the nature of that park has changed with some of the development that's occurred around it, and it will continue to change. I'm not actually aware of any recent safety issues in the park. So because we've got a community playground there, our playgrounds policy generally says we will provide a toilet. That's not the case for every community playground, but we like to, because, you know, with young children, they often get to the park and they want to go to the toilet. So that's the rationale behind that. But it is a question of affordability and priority for council.
Madam Chair, as a part to that is, in the paper it says it costs about $40,000 to a year to sustain those toilets. And I have friends who do a cleaning of those toilets. Is there anything else that we spend on this other than those people who are working there? How would it cost that much?
So there is the interest and depreciation cost for that capital. There is as well as the cleaning, there's the materials, toilet paper, soap, all those sorts of things, all the utility costs, the power and the water. And then there's a maintenance cost, and it can be quite high on some toilets. The reality is, over time, most of the component part toilets of over a 30-year life get replaced. So whether it's the hand dryer, the toilet roll holder, or even the toilet sometimes needs to be replaced. So that is the cost. We can give you a more detailed breakdown.
Cool. Should we go to Councillor Chung? Did you put your hand up for a question? Yep.
I'm just wondering, are there specific requirements that require us when we're building a toilet to build it to a specific standard, like we have to have a little house around it? Because over in France, they have these open toilets, and also in the Netherlands where they're, I agree, not to everyone's taste, but they're much cheaper. And they don't have hand dryers, and they just assume that you can, after you wash your hands, you can dry it in the air. So would there be a possible option?
As councillors have pointed out, or Councillor Young pointed out, there are public health considerations with the toilets we provide. And also we've decided that our toilets will be fully accessible and all gender. But look, the reality is this is a issue that all councils face, and there's there's a lot of toilets that are built off the shelf these days, so the standards that we build are to that level. Jackie's got any other comment? But yeah, we do have standards, yeah, but those are New Zealand standards, yeah.
Okay, but would it be possible for us to look at that, to see what other people do?
Look, we're always open to looking at what people do.
Sorry, this conversation is getting a bit difficult.
I love the innovation today. Deputy Mayor Foon.
Kia ora. Can I just confirm that in Newtown that there are, what other parks that are flat and accessible do we have, and what other parks that are flat and accessible have toilets?
Jackie might be able to help me, but we do have publicly accessible toilets on the back of Newtown Park, but Newtown Park is a facility that's a bookable facility. There's obviously toilets at the zoo, but as a zoo or CAF user. Back in the town centre, we've got toilets at the Newtown Library, so I'm not sure off the top of my head if we've got any other toilets, yeah.
Right, Councillor Pennant. No? All good. All right. Well, thank you, colleagues. There are no further partai. Mā wai te mōtini e whakataka koutou. Is there a mover for the motion? I understand our Southern Ward councillors are going to be moving this. There's an amendment. Shall we throw this amendment up on screen and with the leave of the meeting, see if it can be included in the substantive? You've just sent it through. Righto. Councillors, are we happy for this to be a part of the substantive, and we'll just grab some officer advice on that real quick? Is that cool?
So how does that look? Because number one was quite. Are you suggesting that we still have number one? Because isn't there a bit of a conflict?
We're just updating the resolution. I think there's a new one. Let's take a 5-minute break. Cool. Thanks, colleagues.
What? I thought what I said was all right.
It's just a headline.
I know, but that was, I never used the word axed. And I never
Thanks all for your patience. I thought if we allowed a few more minutes, it's better to flush things out with an open conversation. Righto, I am now going to hand over to Nuruddin Abdurrahman for an amended substantive. Once Nuruddin introduces the amended substantive report, then we will have an opportunity to ask questions of officers and advice. Do turn your microphone on, please.
Number 1 says that, and if evidence supports the need to install a new toilet. However, number 3 says just direct officers to investigate options. So I don't see how we can, lots of things support a need, it's just that we have to prioritise. So I wonder whether, and if evidence, if that should be removed. Because number 3 says officers will investigate options, because it comes back to the LTP to determine anyway. But I think you can't say if evidence supports the need, because then you're saying it will go ahead.
Right.
Can I suggest, if those amendments, it's an amended substantive, to just have a 1 sentence point 1 and just cut from although?
Right. Strike that out.
So it would be crossed out with red, sort of thing.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Calvert, for drawing that to the attention. Nuruddin, as you're moving this paper, are you comfortable with that strike? Yep. Righto. Okay. I'll hand it over for you to introduce the paper. Sorry.
Kia ora whānau. I think this is really very important for the community who got involved since 1995, and some of you were not even born at the time. So it's it's also important the kind of the community involvement in this petition. When you go through the names, community members who signed this, is that some of them never even heard that we have consultations. Some of them never even come to this consultation. Look at Fatima Sheikha. I know Fatima. She's someone who works about 70 hours a week, hardworking. I don't even know how Rona and others reach out to her to sign this. Sheikh Mohammed, when was the last time Sheikh said anything about our city? So the involvement of the communities in this area is something this community should be appreciating and putting on board with it. In 2020, there was an option to put a toilet park in this area. However, it was a survey that showed a bit of safety issues. That is not the case anymore. And the third point, the closest toilet from Carrara Park is the one in Newtown, near Newtown Library. You have to cross Daniel Street, which is a very dangerous, again, go back all the way and cross another street, which is Constable. For a family, walking through those very dangerous stairs is not an option. And most of our toilets, they already have. So I wanted to say a lot on this area, but I think it's very supported by most of you, and I'll just leave it there, and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abdurrahman. I just have a partai of officers to understand. He partai me utu ai tau patu. No, that's the wrong one. I was covering my arm. Mawai te whakahounga e tautoko. Is there a seconder for this motion? I understand Deputy Mayor Foon is seconding. Now that that has been established, I would just like to ask for any officer advice on this amendment. James, Paul, we've got Paul.
The question of low-cost provision often comes up with toilets, but as I've pointed out, we do build them to a standard, and particularly in a place like this, they're not just a toilet for parents. We provide baby change facilities and that sort of thing. I think you need to look at the whole of life cost with toilet provision. So if we've said 30 years is what you want to get out of a toilet, you need to spend that money up front. There's plenty of low-cost options for toilets available out there in the market, but our experience is in terms of the sort of things people do to public toilets, you have higher operating costs, and then you'll need to renew the asset in a much shorter timeline, maybe as soon as 10 or 15 years. So that is the trade-off. We can do some modelling for councillors around that so you can understand a little bit better what we're trying to explain.
Righto. Colleagues, are there any further partai around the amended substantive? No? Fantastic. We will roll back into debate. Deputy Mayor Fern, would you like to speak?
Yeah, I just really want to thank Rona and all of the team at Newtown Residents Association who've worked really hard to bring this petition to us today. And I think that as a community, I was well aware of the ask and need for toilets in Kōrau Park long before I put my hand up for a political adventure. And I just also want to point out that at the end of the day for Newtown, this is the only flat, accessible park that mums with prams can come to and be in an environment where children are happy to be in. That only park in Newtown does not have toilets. The people in Newtown are a diverse community. We have the highest amount of social housing in Wellington. That means that outdoor spaces that are safe and accessible and have facilities are really needed by our community. And that is why we've had a strong response to the petition, as Councillor Abdurrahman has pointed out. So I do want to point out that part of the challenge of this is acknowledging the challenging financial challenges we've got going ahead for the long-term plan, and we do acknowledge that. And I just want to put on the table that if depending on what officers come back with for us, what, when, where, how, we also have funds available for the Newtown Bowling Club, and I just want to say that there is the possibility of transferring some funds for the toilet as one of the options going forward. So, yeah, thanks to everybody for your support, for all those mums in Newtown that don't have anywhere else to go. And dads. Apologies. And everybody who comes to the park and caregivers. Kia ora.
No, my colleagues, is there any further debate? I see none. Councillor Abdurrahman, over to you for a right of reply.
I really encourage all of you to support this amendment and vote it. And thank you, Rona, and the Newtown community. And when it comes to where that money comes from, it's a discussion for future. And who knows, Rona, after this, you might gonna start to another petition. Thank you.
Kia ora. Just want to briefly acknowledge the work of both the ward councillors around this as well. Nei ka potitia te motini. I now put the motion which has been moved and seconded. Ko mana, that is carried unanimously. Done. Now, colleagues, we have just under 10 minutes before morning tea. How are we feeling? Would we like to take an early morning tea, or could we speak to one of the advisory groups first? Pardon? Keep going? Let's keep going. Our advisory groups might have some stuff that they need to get to. 3.1, advisory group annual reports and work plans. Know my representatives from the environmental reference group to come forward and speak to their annual report and work plan. Kia ora. Yeah, you can take a seat at the table.
Yep, thank you. Kia ora koutou katoa. Ko Michelle Rush toku ingoa. I've met most of you before, but it's very nice to have the privilege of meeting those of you I haven't met before. I'm the co-chair of the Wellington Environmental Reference Group and been on the group now for just over 3 years. Have to say it's a role that's growing on me. I just really want to firstly acknowledge the phenomenal work that councillors do on a number of environmental platforms for our city. I just really want to thank you all for that. I know it's a hard job that you have. I'd also like to acknowledge some of the council staff that we get superlative support from. Moana Maki in particular, she's just a fount of incredible knowledge and wisdom and phenomenal corporate memory. So I'd just like to put on the record a very heartfelt thanks to Moana, not just for this year, but for many years of service to our committee. I know that she's held in very high esteem. And of course also the democracy service staff who provide considerable administrative, moral and other support to us. Letitia Lowry, Emily Dean and Tian Daniels are the three who've helped us over the last year. So just want to warmly acknowledge their contribution as well. It's really appreciated. Our group is here to advise council on the best ways to improve Wellington's quality of life environmentally. We see that in the broad sense, also being around socially, culturally and economically through protecting and enhancing the local environment. That's, and another part of our role is to bring knowledge and insight into the council around different environmental issues. We are blessed with having a very strong group at the moment. We recently appointed 3 new people who are bringing in some skills we haven't had, and I'd like to just let you know the sorts of people we've got. You'll see you've hopefully got the report, but of the 3 who've just come in, Emina Petrovic comes to us from Victoria University and she has some superlative skills in the area of built environment sustainability, and already she's proving a huge asset to our debates and discussion. We've also had, let me turn to the right page. So I can get people's surnames correct. Sorry about that, people. We're first name basis in the group. Matt Scott, and he's an expert in areas like climate change accounting and data management, and again, bringing some great questions to the group. And then also David Binstead, and David is passionate about the circular economy, and I guess what I'd really like to say with the contributions of these new folk into our group, Eugene Doyle is our other one, and he brings a depth of community experience and expertise in a whole lot of things environmental, including in the catchment space, and so. What I think I'd just like to underline is that one of the things that has become really apparent and is of real concern to us on the Environmental Reference Group at the moment is the pace at which we are seeing the very real horrors of climate change, and you will know what they are, and the enormous cost it is putting on councils in other parts of the country and our council. We've been lucky this winter; we haven't had quite the same horrendous conditions as some other ones. However, all we need to do is look to the northeast and see the horrible reality that the city and district and regional councils are facing in Hawke's Bay, for example. And I think what it's really made us realise is that somehow, with all the good work going on, we somehow have to get some sort of circuit breaker or step change into that and put that on steroids, because this is very, very serious. If we don't look after our environment and reduce our carbon footprint significantly, and New Zealand does have a big role to play in that, despite being a small nation, we're not going to have an economy to play with. We're not going to have businesses, we're not going to have growth, and we're going to have utter chaos. And so I guess as a group, we're very keen to see how can the City Council support businesses in particular to really up their game in terms of deepening our economy, making it fully circular, and really reducing emissions on every level. And I think that there is, you are in the position where you could make a huge difference with some careful policy and careful thinking about the financial incentives and instruments that can be used, where that could be realised. And there is some fantastic work going on in Wellington's business community already. And so it may also be a role where you can actually highlight and publicise some of the great work being done by companies and those who are helping to do these very difficult tasks, because of course you've got to look back into your supply chain and that starts to get very complicated. And so I think that's one of the things we really wanted to push was let's really look at this very carefully, particularly you as governors, and ask those hard questions. And the second area is in this whole area of resilience. And I had to laugh, I'm sorry, but I cycle a lot, and I've been cycling up Kenya Street in Niall recently, and we had a fountain in the street, and it started off as a little thing, and then it got bigger and bigger, and then it sort of turned into the usual thing of getting up this high, and poor old Wellington Water sort of rolled out their tank again and fixed it. And then, of course, 2 days later, the leak had popped up in a different part of the line on the same street. And as I was cycling in here today, it's back there again. And I suppose I'm struck with, again, our crumbling infrastructure, our pipes that get fixed, but the fix never quite cuts the mustard. And I'm just thinking, again, how are we going to manage this as our earth continues to shake and then we get rainstorms that make it even more fragile? And how do we afford it? And so the need to build in resilience to, A, build better, but B, also perhaps think about where we put things is really coming into sharp relief. And again, I think that's something to keep an eye on for you as governors. Yes, and I think I'm going to stop there and just ask if you have any questions, because I think that's probably a more important use of your time. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today.
Ngā mihi, Michelle. We have two pātai. The first one's from Councillor Pennant.
Thank you for all the work that you do and all the passion that you bring. I'm just curious, where do you see the future of ERG heading? Just given now we've got a whole lot of people on council, everyone's an environmentalist here, lots of amazing staff members. So, yeah, just about where your role is, because ERG was set up at a time when the council wasn't quite so over the issues.
That's a really good question, and I think that what's become apparent to us as we converse with council staff and councillors is that we have a little bit of a special position because we get to hear everything that's going on all over the council, whereas the council doesn't get to hear everything that's going on itself, if you know what I mean. And so I sort of feel that we've probably got a useful role to help council integrate with itself, because I acknowledge that as a very large entity, doing that's very hard in day-to-day work. It's a reality, you know, people end up working in silos despite the best efforts. And so I feel like we can assist there. I also feel that we have got these sort of people who are coming with different ways of looking at things, and it's just like sometimes when you're buried in it you can't see the wood for the trees. We can provide a little bit of looking up and looking across, and thinking about our recent meeting, some of the members around the table come up with questions and I think, gosh, never even thought of that, you know. So I think it's just in that way of a different way of thinking about things, and a perhaps assistance with helping council integrate itself, and providing another view is important. And I know another thing we can do is we can bring in sort of feelings from the wider community about what's going on. That said, you know, obviously it's with wearing our particular hats. We're not here, obviously, to represent in the same way that you would be. I hope that answers your question.
Right, so a quick question from Deputy Mayor Foon.
Kia ora, Michelle. Thank you, and to all the team for your work. Just was querying in your report the multi-working party idea and concept. So more going out into the community to socialise was what I gathered. But can you just explain that a little bit in terms of what
I think
where you were landing with that?
Right. Well, I think that our group is quite supportive of initiatives like citizens' assemblies and advisory panels. And one of the things, and I do get driven a little bit mad, I have, as you all do, many friends in different walks of life and spheres. And I am getting to that point where they start to moan and complain about the council. I find myself getting rather shirty with them and saying things like, oh, so is your business managing 400 service areas, is it? So would you like to do that job? And I'm finding myself reacting a little bit like that. And what it's made me realise, though, is that unless people are exposed to what you are exposed to in terms of the need to think long term, the sheer complexity of things. I mean, listen to the complexity of a public toilet, for God's sake. And then you've got to figure in climate change and trying to work out how to have zoning rules about where people can live. I mean, yeah, go figure. And so I sort of feel that what might be helpful is that the more times you do get groups of of ordinary people doing ordinary things across a range of different industries and realities together to actually have these discussions, you do see them go, oh my God, and you do see them starting to think creatively and differently about solutions, and then they go out and talk about them. In my professional role, I'm an independent facilitator and a specialist in engagement, and I've seen that myself in my own work, where you can get lay people to a very high level of understanding and knowledge, and then they become the very best advocates.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah.
Sorry, we've just run out of time.
Okay.
Yeah, feel free to wrap up that last point.
Support for that. Yeah.
Kia ora. It's always lovely to hear from the advisory groups. Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
Cool. Colleagues, we are going to break for morning tea now, and I'll allow about 15 minutes for that just so we can hammer down on any coming amendments. Thank you. Kia ora, colleagues. I'm just going to check that the live stream is back online. Yep, we are good to go. No, my thanks for sorting some stuff out over the break. I'm just going to reorder the in terms of who's going to speak to us next. We're going to bring Youth Council forward because the lovely co-chair or chair, Nico, is actually missing school. So missing school to participate in democracy. No, no, my Nico, feel free to come up to the table. Welcome, thanks. You've got 10 minutes.
Awesome, thank you so much. Kia ora, my name's Nico. I'm the Deputy Chair of the Wellington City Youth Council. Our Chair, Anastasia, unfortunately unwell today, so I'll be just presenting and I'll be going over just some of the work that we've done over the past year, and then just also looking slightly forward to what's on the agenda for the coming year. And so one of the main parts of the job of the Youth Council is to do policy work and submissions and give advice to, obviously, the City Council on projects that we're working on. So I'll just go over a few of the key projects that we have been involved in this year. And so one of these was the Community Facilities Plan. And so Youth Council didn't do a formal submission on this, but we gave some feedback in a number of meetings to actually Christine, who was just here earlier, and had a chat about what that plan means for young people in Wellington. And so it was looking at about 270, I think was the number, council lease facilities. And so we talked about how these facilities can be inclusive to young people and how they can be accessible. And we raised the point that to be inclusive is not just to be available to young people, but young people need to feel welcome in these spaces, so they need to be actively be promoted in areas where young people are. And it's basically what we were saying is there needs to be a bit more encouragement and a bit more awareness raised about the spaces that actually are available for young people in the city, because there are some really cool spaces, but a lot of times young people just maybe aren't aware of them or don't feel comfortable in them. Some other work we did was looking at, this is an external submission we did, but it was the Independent Electoral Review. So that's to the Electoral Commission. And we did a submission on this because we believe that obviously the democratic process is very important for young people in particular. And it was looking at Aotearoa's democracy at a national, regional and local level. So obviously that's also relevant to Youth Council because it's a local government issue. And so obviously young people, a key point we're talking about, young people have lower voter turnout than basically any other age group. And so we were looking at, what can we do to increase this? How can we promote greater youth involvement in these spaces? And I think what is really interesting is because there seems to be maybe a general social perception that young people are maybe apathetic or they don't necessarily care about these issues. But what we're saying is absolutely young people care about, political issues. They care about social issues. They have so strong opinions. If you go to school and you talk to young people, high schoolers, they have very strong views on things like climate change, on public transport, on, even taxation, right? And it's not so much that these people who aren't voting, they don't care. It's more that they don't feel empowered by the systems and they don't feel that they were built to engage with them. So we were looking at, how do we promote greater youth involvement in these spaces, and how do we create systems that young people feel actually like they want to participate in. And so a couple of recommendations we made in that was looking at the voting age, and we recommended in that submissions that the voting age is lowered to 16. I'm aware that the City Council's also, I think, passed something in favour of supporting that initiative, so that's really good to see. And also we were just highlighting the need for greater civics education, particularly in high school. Some of our members are part of Generation Vote who do civics engagement with young people, but I think there needs to be a greater, push for that at a more national level. So that was why it was to the Electoral Commission. Some more work that we did was a submission to the District Plan Hearing Panel. which was following on from our submission to council about on the draft district plan. And basically some of the key points that we raised in this submission was looking at housing density, because obviously, the city that we build is going to be hugely impactful on all of our lives, but particularly the lives of young Wellingtonians who will be living in the city for the longest, by definition. So we need to have a city that is built for them. And what we were really keen to see was one of the recommendations we made was kind of increasing these what they call walkable catchments, I believe, in which you're allowed to build higher density housing. And so by raising those kind of height limits, you can obviously create more spaces in which people can live, and that is going to, ideally, you'd lower housing costs and make it young people more able to live in the city, because at the moment a lot of young people are forced to move because they simply can't afford housing. I'll be staying at home next year with my parents because I can't afford to stay in a hall or to rent or anything like that. So it's really important that we build a city, for the future. Just one more point on some of the work we did. We have been throughout the year working with the Youth Hub team and working on implementing that Youth Hub that the Youth Council has been working on for a number of years, and I think help secure funding for it before my time. And so we've been involved in the in consultation for that through a number of different groups. We've worked with the architects, we've worked with the design team, and then we've worked with the Y, which are a youth service, local youth service, that will be running the Youth Hub once it opens. I think next year. And so the Youth Council gave some feedback, particularly to the architects, about what they'd like to see the space look like, because obviously, if the young people aren't actually involved in the process of deciding what a youth hub looks like and how is it going to be catering to the needs of the people who are going to be using it. So, youth councillors brought up ideas, gaming areas, music rooms, study nooks, and also some youth councillors raised the idea of a climbing wall, but we were told that was not necessarily architecturally feasible. So that will not, I don't think, be continuing. And we're still in conversation with the design team. I think they're coming to our next meeting to kind of talk about some of the branding for that. But, our ultimate kind of message is that this is such an important space for young people in Wellington. And we are really just wanting to create a space where young people feel welcome, where young people are, able to hang out, and a place that's, cost-free. Because a lot of time in the city, if you want to spend time in town, if you want to go to a cafe, you've got to spend money, and it's just quite hard for young people often to find spaces where they're able to spend time without paying money. So that was kind of the last kind of piece of work I'll be talking about, and just some of the other work we've done this year. Youth councillors have been working on creating a How We Work Together document, which basically outlines our advisory group's values and expectations, and kind of the space that we want to create. And we've also been looking at, obviously, the role of te tiriti in our submissions, and we've had some conversations with Mātahua Aranui about how we can kind of greater incorporate the views of mana whenua into our submissions, and kind of looking at the resources that are available for us to do that. Because I think it's really important that youth councillors do some research in that area before we do submissions. And then some events that we've attended this year, I'll give you a brief summary. We attended a 25 years a youth council event, because that was an anniversary that came this year. I think some of you guys attended, and that was a really awesome event just to celebrate all the work that youth council's done over the past, the past quarter of a century. We also attended a couple of state memorial service for the Queen, and also a National Anzac Day commemoration. And then in the upcoming year, just to give you a brief outline, our Youth Council is going to be focusing obviously on a number of issues, but we've said our priorities are long-term plan, waste management, working at kind of developing our understanding of te tiriti, accessibility, transport, especially Let's Get Wellington Moving, climate change issues, arts and culture, housing, and keeping on our work with the district plan, and also urban design. So that finishes up my presentation. I'm happy to take questions.
Mihi Nico. Right, we've got two quick questions. We'll go with Pauiwi Liz Kelly first.
I do have a question, but just quickly, can I commend you on your presentation? You just ooze confidence, and you make me feel so old. but I just wanted to commend you on that. But the question is, I was kind of looking for some clarity. with your solution to empower youth to engage, are you saying that's work in progress with this proposed solutions that you've put to us today?
Yeah, so I think there were a number of ways that we thought we could kind of help bolster youth engagement in voting and just democratic processes generally. Obviously, Youth Council is one great way that we can do that, but also the recommendations to the Electoral Commission. We were talking about greater civics education, which is really important. Obviously, not a council-related issue necessarily, but something that we really support. And also, again, lowering the voting age, because actually the studies show that when you lower the voting age to 16 and people are in high school, when they're first voting, that increases voter turnout, so that's really important.
Ka pai, thank you.
Councillor Chung, real quick.
Great. Quick question about affordable housing. I'm very keen on getting it. And I've lived in student hostels. Would you be happy with affordable housing similar to a student hostel, that is around about that size? Because that's a good way of getting them cheaper.
Well, I mean, obviously the aspiration is that young people have proper kind of housing to live in the future. In terms of the hostels, I'm sure young people would love to have well put together places where they can stay in. The thing I would say about student hostels is that they're still incredibly expensive, right? So I think that's why I said I'm staying at home next year, about $20,000 a year to stay in. So even that's not really an affordable solution for many young people. And I think that just highlights the need for more housing in Wellington.
Ngā mihi, Nico, always incredibly articulate. Thanks for your time this morning.
Yeah.
Right, I know my members of the Takatapui and Rainbow Advisory Council track. Kia ora, Tyler. Hello, we have allocated you 10 minutes if you want to leave any space in there for pārtai.
Tēnā koutou katoa ki mana whenua o tēnei rohi tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. No California ho, ko te whanganui atara toku tūranga waiwai. And mahi ana a ho track for Wellington City Council, ko Tyler toko ingoa. I'll start quickly with our track whakatoki. E koe te tui, e kite te kaka, e kuku te kereru. The tui squawks, the kaka chatters, the kereru coos. It takes all kinds of people. Track has spent a year working alongside officers and elected officials and our partners through Wellington City Council to make Wellington City a better place for all types of people. In the report that we've submitted to you folks, I've included a short history of the past of Rainbow in Wellington and how Wellington has actually had groups like Track before, and how we look to the people that came before us and the issues that were important to them and the issues that are still important to us now. We certainly want to highlight the important people that have been with us, our two counselors, our ELT rep, our Dem Services people, and particularly somebody that I would like to highlight to you after our year in review is the folks from Te Awa Mapara, the Draft Community Facilities Plan, particularly Christine Ford. This was the first time that we were able to work with officers on a plan from inception through to consultation. We felt really included, and we felt that our feedback and our guidance was actually taken on board very constructively, and we wanted to let council know that that was the way that we like to work. Going forward, upcoming for Track, we are looking at kind of four pillars of how we want to work with council in our advisory capacity going forward. These are safety, visibility, community, and intersectionality. These four things underpin what we as your advisory body for rainbow communities want to ensure that Wellington has and wants to ensure that Wellington continues to be a community that is good for all rainbow people. And the intersectionality between the environment groups and the advisory groups and all of the other subgroups of people that live in Wellington is something that we continue to look at really deeply. Rather than talk at you too much, please step in and read our report and our upcoming work plan. I'd like to take the opportunity to have a dialogue with you I'm very excited and happy to answer your questions.
No, mai, thank you, Tyler. Colleagues, any pātai? Councillor Pennant.
Kia ora, Tyler. Lovely to see you here. And great report and great work. Just wondering what your view would be on what councillors as a whole, as a governance group, could do to advance your work.
Sorry, I lost you there for a second. I think I'm back now. Thank you, Councillor. We are absolutely very keen on the council using our skills and our knowledge more deeply. As an advisory body here to support the councillors, to support our mayor and our elected officials, we're very keen for you to come to us and seek more of our knowledge. Our group is a very diverse group that's been selected carefully in order to bring a range of ages, genders, communities, diversity, a range of people together. And we have a lot more that we feel we could give. We encourage the council to ask the business that is council, their officers, to come to us at the start of programs. We would like to be included at the very beginning so that we can work alongside your teams to share our knowledge and expertise so that things that are good for the rainbow community and intersectionally throughout other communities can be heard and incorporated throughout those processes. We have found quite often we're looked at as a tick box process, and that's something that we're hoping to change the culture on in order to give you the best of what we have to offer. Also specifically, we've been looking at the long-term process. Of course, funds are tight going forward. We all know how complicated that is going to be. However, we believe that council should be putting money and resources into things that are good for rainbow communities. Again, we're looking at visibility, safety, community, and intersectionality. Things like having rainbow spaces that are safe and friendly, training front-facing, public-facing officers in ways of inclusivity and diversity so that they can interact with the community face-to-face to the best of their abilities. Us right through to helping to make policy changes. Something that's quite important to us is really getting to the core of inclusivity in the way of, we were talking about public toilets earlier. How can we ensure that every time a public toilet is built, a new one is created, that there will be a multi-gender option there? Or when we are redoing our community facilities, how can we ensure that they are more inclusive and more accessible?
Kia ora, Tyler. Colleagues, any further pātai? No? Well, thank you, Tyler. You've been very clear and concise. Thanks for coming in to have a chat with us today. I'm sure I'll see you shortly.
Thank you, folks. We look forward to working with you going forward through the next year. Ka kite.
Thank you. Righto. Councillors, you may have noticed that we have not received an annual report from the Pacifica Advisory Group, but we have, however, received a work program for the 2023 to 24 area. This is just going to be handed out now in hard copy form, and I propose that we table it as a part of the meeting understanding orders to receive that information. And just to note, we are still also expecting an annual report, but that will be circulated when it comes to our desk. Cool. While we're all reading through that, I know my Jennifer Parker ki te hora ai te kōrero. Please welcome Jen to come and introduce the report. And Jen, Marcella, Steph, Stephen.
Kia ora, Chair and Committee. So you have the report in front of you. It's really an opportunity for you to take it as read, but we're here to answer any questions that you may have around it.
Colleagues, any partai? Councillor Pennant.
Thanks for this. How's the group going if we didn't get a report back and they're not here? Is everything going okay?
We were really disappointed that a report didn't come from that. Be assured, officers worked very hard over a number of about 4 months in terms of making sure that they were aware of what was required to produce that report. Obviously, they have officer support, just like all the other advisory groups. I wish they had.
So they've been in operation for some years, which is good.
Correct.
I'm just wondering what we as a governance body might be able to do to help them achieve even more. Yeah, it just feels like there's still quite a lot of work to do in the space.
I'll note, so the council reps for PAG are Councillor Sarah Free and the alternate is Councillor Rebecca Matthews. Maybe I
could talk to them offline. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Abdirahman.
Yeah, it's interesting to see if it's really effective way of going forward when some of them are really good and some I'm not sure. But my question would be, how much will it cost to establish one?
I can get that information through. We may have that from the previous thing. So it tends to be, it's a combination of staff time, remuneration. It depends on the number of members of the advisory group. So if there's a monthly meeting and there are 20 members or 18 members of a committee and they're paid $110 per person, you can understand the impact of that financially. But I can do the math. I can't do it very fast right in front of you.
What can be done when the established advisory group is not working according to what it's established for?
Yeah.
What can you do as officers, or is that councillors' job to look at it and how to go forward?
I think it's a joint opportunity, isn't it? So to talk about what might be the issues, making sure that they're getting the officer support, that people are engaging well with the chairs, that we have ELT, attending each of those meetings, linking in, as I know Councillor Free and the officer that looks after the Pacific Advisory Group are talking, regularly around how to, build that more strongly, to get that buy-in more strongly. So I mean, as with most of these, there's no simple solution. It is around relationship. It is around resourcing. It is around support. And I suppose to make the points, at different points, if you look over the number of years, different advisory groups do need different levels of support. They don't operate as any group. They need different input at different times. And I think when we're thinking about adding in a new advisory group, that's something to be aware of, is, a little bit like the toilets in Kōrau Park. It's not just putting a building in. It is about servicing and support. It is about ELT attending each meeting. It's about having 2 officers attending each meeting. It's about, all of that, the payroll, all of those resourcing. Is about how you get a good advisory group. So it's both the people in the group, how we look after them, and this link that they have here through your liaisons into the committee and to council more broadly.
He Pātaio, any further questions? No? Thank you, Jennifer. Righto. With questions completed, I am going to move the motion. I would just like to acknowledge, as always, the role that our advisory groups play, both in their community and in the structure of council. It's really clear. I've had the pleasure of sitting on quite a few over the years, and it's really clear kind of the amount of experience and their ability to bring themselves and their whānau back into the community as well. And to highlight the role of democratic services is often held up as incredibly valuable, and I know that a lot of our groups are really satisfied with that. We need strong systems to be in place in order to engage with members of our city. Recently I participated in one of the induction workshops, and occasionally I'm invited back to impersonate other councillors alongside their other alumni members, and just every single year Youth Council gets another fresh few crop of faces, and they're just absolutely fantastic. over several different meetings as well. You kind of get triple or quadruple briefed for Te Awe Māpara, and just to acknowledge, this morning several advisory group members have talked about Christine and the process that she's run to link up those two things as well. So I have a high level of confidence in all of our operating advisory groups. Mawai Tautoko, do I have a seconder for this report? Pauiwi Liz Kelly, would you like to speak? Oh, fantastic. Councillors, is there, he takai hei tau patupatu, is there any debate? Councillor Pennant.
Yeah, thank you. And Chair, in your right of reply, could you just say why everyone hasn't turned up today? Sorry, I was expecting the AAG as well.
Oh, right. Yep.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Look, just two comments. Some of these groups have been around for some time, and all the advice they provide is incredibly important. But it seems that there is a bit of struggle going on, and I think we just need to look at how we can support them. I've got particular background with the AAG. Councillor Matthews is doing a great job there. But I would like to see how we can elevate the work of that group, along with the others as well. And I think also that rather than just providing advice, they need to be configured so to provide some outcomes that are consistent with council objectives. So I know Councillor O'Neill and I do talk about, achievements in the context of track. It's really important that we make some advancements so we're not just talking. So yeah, I do think it just sounds like there's a bit more work to be doing, given we haven't had all reports, given not everyone has turned up today. I appreciate it's difficult, but that's important so that we can continue the conversation and offer support where it's helpful.
Councillor Free.
Yeah, thank you. I was searching for my hand up and for some reason couldn't see it. Look, it's only just come to my attention that actually a report hasn't been done. I was very disappointed. I've had some discussions with some of the support staff, and we are going to make that a priority, that there will be some reporting done. But I think it has been hard for me as a liaison to know exactly where I sit. I did get some feedback that they wanted to be quite independent. In fact, they do have some section of their meeting that's just for themselves. But I think this is a challenge for everybody, because if a group is going to be of value, then it does need to be meeting the minimum requirements that we've set for the group, and also doing meaningful work. I think somebody has already touched on the fact, I think you are, Councillor Pennant, that it would be very good to identify some key pieces of work for each of the groups that they can be really involved in and contribute to in depth. Otherwise, it's hard for them to feel motivated and to keep feeling like they're genuinely adding value. So there's definitely some challenges going forward. As the liaison, I'll be doing everything I can to find out how we can move forward more productively. But again, I think that there is a question sometimes to be asked about, the ongoing future of a group, especially when we don't get basic things like reports.
Cool. I had Councillor Abdirahman next on the list, and then Councillor Calvert.
So this is where I can bring my amendment, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, Steve's good, I think.
We'll get that up on the screen shortly if you can just confirm that that's the correct wording that you'd like. Cool, feel free to take it away. Am I able to clarify with the member that this is the correct amendment that you would like? I've seen a few different versions.
So yes, the first one is just to agree in principle to establishment of an advisory group.
Did you want to fully introduce it and do your speech?
Kia ora whānau. Let me start with this. This council has been always very progressive. And about 18 years ago, ethnic community at the time, which we currently call multicultural, had a meeting with the mayor and the CEO, and followed by, from there on, they used to have every 3 months a working group where the ethnic communities feed into the council's work. That was established at some stage. From there on, the relationship with council has been not structured in such a way. Ethnic community constitute 20% of the population of Wellington. I came in 2008 to New Zealand, thanks to the progressive series that gave me all these opportunities. I'm today sitting in this table. But the community that welcomed me also expect this council to listen to their advice. And I think time is now. I'm not sure when it comes to how that can change the whole thing, looking at some of the reports, but I think it's the right thing to do, and I think it's the right time to do it. Some of you might question where we're going to get the money. Of course, we are going through a difficult time. It's a challenge for council. However, even though democracy is expensive, the alternative is not an alternative. In 2020, there was a discussion about the establishment of ethnic advisory group, but it was politicized, and then some people didn't support it. And I do understand, and I really appreciate those who moved the amendment. I also really understand. I had a discussion with those who didn't agree at the time, because sometimes it's not what you put forward. Maybe the perception of the community is very important, how they perceive the issue itself. So in this case, I'm not also asking just to do it now. It's going to be part of the long-term plan discussions. The third point is to address, there is a potential to look at it, how we can fund it, other than getting money into the long-term plan through some arrangements from the existing funding. So I request all of you to support this amendment. And for the community, this is not only my community, the community to all of you. And all of you have ethnic communities in your area. And this is a small thing that we can do for this ethnic community. And to mention again as well, back then, one of the things the CEO used to have is what they call it ethnic officer liaison, where the employed person of the council used to engage with the communities. I think it's time to go back and see through some of those things and do a bigger job for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, can I just ask if you have a seconder to put the motion? You have already spoken. Councillor Chung. Right, I'm just going to ask, as processed, once it's been put, we have the opportunity to ask partai and questions. Could I, know my Jen, if Jen is around? Cool. Yep. Thank you, Jen.
Aronwa, here now.
Can I start by asking just what the officer advises on this? And I think this is the third iteration I've seen of proposed wording. So if you support, if you don't support, and which parts officers might not be comfortable with.
Through the chair. So it'd probably be most useful if I had a couple of moments.
Yep.
Is that okay? Just literally 2 minutes would be super helpful. Otherwise, you won't get the best advice.
Let's take
two. I can. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues, for your patience over that adjournment. We're going to go back into question time. Over to you, Stephen and Jennifer.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you for giving me that moment to go away and read it properly and kind of come through that. So the request was for, what was the officer advice, what's the officer reaction to this bit. Obviously, in principle, if council would like another advisory group, that is your choice to make, and we're here to support you in the choices that you want to make. It is important to be kind of mindful of a few things, and I'm kind of counting them on my fingers a little bit. So the first is the amount of support that's required for these. So we have an ELT member that is, currently the preferred member, so they have that connection at the organisation at a high level. That means that when they're looking across the work that they're doing, they've got that kind of support. Now, this is the more advisory groups that are added, we have to look at the way that that's supported. There is a limited number of ELT members and they're really busy, so just thinking about that, just being cognizant of that, it would be remiss of me not to point that out. A second bit is just making sure that elected members are all aware that there is also a multicultural council outside of council that has officers attend every meeting of that. You have 2 elected members around the table who attend every meeting of that, and to an outside observer looks quite similar to what this might be, but is being supported and exists within the community and with council support kind of at arm's reach. And the difference really, I suppose, between the amendment that I saw in front of me here, that you see in front of you here, and what we'd talked with the councillor previously is really around that options piece. So we had looked at something that was go away and have a look at further options. That gets around the idea of creating policy or decisions on the hoof, so having this kind of come through in principle agreement to something separate from the work that you're doing every week in the long-term plan piece. So that would be our recommendation, is that we would go away and give you proper advice around what this would actually look like. But as I say, that's the end of my 4 points. Stephen might have something he'd want to add.
Yeah, really just reinforcing that point in the advice that we gave councillor around how to frame this up, was looking at options so that you could avoid that kind of policy on the hoof issue. And the other piece was the way that that's formulated around allocating funding. We're in the middle of a LTP prioritisation process. This is, in effect, directing the committee to provide that funding for it ahead of weighing up all of the other things that you need to do. And given we're really in the middle of that process, what we recommended was to come back with the implications to be considered as part of the LTP, so that you're kind of keeping that open so that you can actually weigh this up against everything else. So, and just on the pay rise one, that was talked about in the workshops. That will be something that we come back with. So it's kind of probably unnecessary to have that resolution there.
Thanks, Stephen.
Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask if officers could share with us the amendments, the wording of the amendment that they recommended to Councillor Abdurrahman, and also give us any advice about process if we did want to foreshadow such an amendment.
Yes, I can ask. Probably the easiest way would be to ask Steph. Oh, thank you, Steph. To have that ready for us, so you can have a look at the wording that we had discussed previously. It's got the similar intent, but just, as I say, kind of giving you that option to really look at the options that officers come back with, and it would be so. The amendment has been moved and seconded. You would want to work that through as a foreshadowing as you've.
Just wanted to check. We did a full review of advisory groups in the last term.
We did.
But if we wanted to have a look generally at the advisory groups with options for the LTP, could we, some sort of word in there about that, and what would be your view on that?
Well, all I'd say is I think it's about 18 months ago since we did that review. It was quite a big process to go through. And, as a result of that, there was well, I think quite a lot of improvements in terms of the structure and the purpose. But if you were really wanting to open that up again and redo that, I mean, there is the opportunity actually coming up with the strategy and policy work program. That would be something that you could weigh up and go, right, we'll add that to the strategy and policy work program, and it's coming back through council on the 25th of October for you to basically agree for the next 3 years.
And I suppose just seeing the nods around the table, if there was the leave of the meeting, if everyone agreed that they wanted to amend this, then that would be the other way. You wouldn't have to go through a full foreshadowing, but you would need the leave of the meeting.
I would also, could we maybe seek some words that would give us an opportunity to have a look, but without doing a full bells and whistles review, because I think that would probably be where it would sit. We would maybe just seek some advice around the overall things without... I mean, the last review, there was consultants involved, there were hundreds of interviews, etc. So, I guess something that indicated, we just kind of have a look, but not a full-scale review.
I think that could be probably built into that number 3 up there in terms of the options, including after 2024 there, finding the right words to capture the sentiment of what you're talking about.
Righto, we've got quite a few people on the question list. Apologies, Jen. Did you have a point? No. Okay, Mea Whānau.
Yeah, apologies. I just wanted to be very clear on the process. If we're not foreshadowing an amendment, but there's a number of us who would like to go a bit closer to the officer wording while adding some sort of review, how do we do that?
Sure. So that the chair could assess whether she had the leave of the meeting for those changes to be made within it. Yeah.
The alternative is that because the amendment's been moved and seconded, as I understand it, if that is lost, then there is another amendment foreshadowed which could look like this or some other form of it.
Righto. Councillor Chung.
My objective in this is to actually have a stronger voice for ethnic communities, and so the question is, how do we actually do that? So if having an ethnic advisory group and the MCC, is that a conflict between them, or would that strengthen the voice of the ethnic communities? Because you look at any one group and they can't represent everyone. I mean, this is what we try and do, and that would be my desire to have that. But if that can't be done, then which is actually better? So I look forward to your advice on this and comments.
Yeah, and I think that's really what we're saying in terms of exploring the options, making sure that we were able to report back on that particular point. What I would say is if you had 2 groups, you run the risk of duplication, but I'm not providing that advice to you because if this went through, we would cover that off in terms of the options.
Okay. Just comparing, I know what an advisory group obviously is. So when we look at the MCC is not an advisory group.
Councillor Chung, just questions at this stage.
Okay, so what is it then? If it's not an advisory group, is it where does it actually fit in?
You may need to ask MMC that question. That might be a question for the Multicultural Council.
And really briefly, an advisory group is one that's established by this council to provide feedback and input into our policy development work primarily, whereas the Multicultural Assembly Council is its own body with its own purpose, and it's not something that's created by us.
Righto, cool. With no further partai, apologies, Pauiwi Kelly.
So my question is that when you were talking about exploring options and the review, what my thinking is with the Citizens' Assembly, can that review that you already did, just so that you're not rehashing everything and there's not an extra cost, can that be looked at in the context of the Citizens' Assembly? Because it seems to me that the Citizens' Assembly is essentially what the advisory groups are all doing. So we're getting the voice of the people we want to hear, but in one structure. And is that preferable? So however you want to word it, that's what I'm saying.
So if you broaden the options to look at, in effect, other options beyond this ethnic advisory group to cover things like that, we could report back on it. And it's an interesting idea and concept. And of course, we're pretty new into the Citizens' Assembly. You know, it's helped us get to where we've got to with the LTP, but clearly it's, you know, it was a pilot to see how did that go. It could be used in other ways in the way you describe.
So, because my understanding of the Citizens' Assembly, how it runs in the States and in Europe, is that's what replaced all of the advisory groups, and it was a mechanism, it was a tool for organisations to go to one space and to hear the voice of all of the community, but in a controlled environment, a structured environment, and it seems to be working.
We might save that kōrero just for when the Citizens' Assembly report comes up in terms of the business, but in terms of relating to this amendment. Yeah. Because this amendment is still Councillor Abdirahman's, I think we will have to look at the changes, but Pauiwi Kelly, if you'd like to raise an amendment to that effect. Right, I've got no further partai on Councillor Abdirahman's amendment. I'm going to go back to Councillor Abdirahman. Would you like to make any changes to your originally put amendment? Are we able to scroll back up to that? So this is the original amendment. Either councillor, would you like to make any changes?
Actually, I found it really interesting. We spend all this time on discussing this. However, it's good to see where everyone stands, and I'm happy to go with officers' first advice for the fact that I see where this is heading. So
replacing the amendment with, apologies, Steph, could we scroll down again?
Can I just suggest we take a brief adjournment to get a few extra words in there about a review, if the mover is happy with that?
Yeah. We still also would like the leave of the meeting, but I'm hearing no large opposition. Right, okay, we'll take a few minutes. Original mover of the motion has agreed to change it. The new resolution is on screen with the leave of the meeting. Are we all happy that that can be tweaked to this one? Yes, I'm hearing aye. Fantastic. Right, well, that puts us back into debate. Councillor Chung, would you like to speak as a seconder?
Okay, my objective in whether we look at advisory groups or we look at MCC representation is to actually represent all groups. So whatever group, whatever country, whatever ethnicities they are, I would like to have them represented. So that is my main objective. I don't want to see a split in us and them with different groups and saying different groups supporting different areas. Now, I was just asked about the current conflict in the Middle East and saying that does the MCC actually represent groups from both those areas? And I think that we should. And so again, it's completely non-political, so that anyone is welcome to join there. So that is a sort of group I want. But I'm just confused as to whether advisory groups or the MCC is actually the best vehicle for representing these. But I'm also happy to support my colleague in his efforts to do the same thing.
Thank you, Ray. Councillor Calvert.
I think this is one time where we've got a rare show of unity across the council in
Woohoo!
Yeah, it happens, and it has to be around the ethnic aspect, so that's great. Look, I think this is I think this amendment is good. It sends a clear signal that we do want to ensure that we do have an ethnic voice. But I think we've got to remember these advisory groups are set up. They're not operational. They're not technical, because that's what that's what our staff are there for, to provide that advice. And it's up to us to make sure that the chief executive is resourced adequately to ensure that she can provide that level of support from an operational staff perspective. These advisory groups are strategic, or they should be strategic. They should be giving us strategic advice on the key strategies, policies that this council is working on. And so, and we do need to make sure that we hear from many different voices, and we do that generally through community engagement, but sometimes there is a need to have some specific groups to make sure that we can hear from them. I think having explore options for advisory groups, I think that's very good. And what I'd like to see, whether you call it a citizens' assembly, or you call it forums, or whatever it's called, it doesn't necessarily mean that people need to meet once a month. It might be groups are brought together 2 or 3 times a year, just depending on what the key strategic advice that we need as a council on some of the work program going ahead, and it needs to be directly related to that. And with council guiding the setup and who's part of that, that means that we ensure that we hear from a broad range of voices within these specific groups. And so I am very happy to support this amendment. Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor Calvert. Councillor Matthews.
First of all, I would like to thank Councillor Abdurrahman for his advocacy on the substantive issue at play here, and it shows to me the importance of having the diversity around the council table as well as with the advisory groups. So I want to acknowledge and thank him for that. And I guess I want to be clear, I do support the establishment of a ethnic advisory group, and I will, it's my intention to vote for it. And but it's important to go through the process and get the correct advice and have it all be in context. I actually note, very much that point you made, Councillor Chung, that one of the reasons we need to do the work is because the Multicultural Council do need to be part of the conversation about how their role in vis-a-vis council may be different, or do some members morph into this, or how it all works, as part of that work. And I want to thank Poiwi Kelly's for her comments around the Citizens' Assembly. Having attended on Saturday, I do think there are opportunities for good lessons and potentially some, long-term shifts in the way we work in this space, as we kind of know more and you kind of know more and you kind of do better. And I guess to just briefly, speak to the substantive, as a councillor rep on the Accessibility Advisory Group, I have kind of been on this journey for 4 years where I have seen that group feel more empowered and effective and supported, and feel less so. And unfortunately, we're in a bit of I know the very short, succinct report that, I think it is difficult. And without that ongoing support from all fronts, which does require resource, it won't be as effective, and the people on them will not feel as if they are contributing to the council's work and see their issues and concerns reflected in our work in the way that we all want them to be, and which is the purpose of these groups. So it does require resource. So I'm committed to working with them to get on an upward trajectory again. But it is complicated, and every meeting of that group is complicated when there are, a big group of people with very, diverse disabilities, multiple forms of communication, requiring, and I want to just quickly acknowledge Democracy Service, it takes more than one person with highly skilled to support a group of disabled people to do this kind of work. And so it is challenging, but we always trying to find ways we can do better. So I encourage you to support this amendment.
Councillor Young.
So I don't like the advisory groups. I don't think they really achieve very much, and they are a cost. And it's fine to have a cost if it achieves something. But the other thing is, just as an aside, I have quite a lot of friends in Europe, various countries in Europe, who are absolutely amazed with New Zealand's obsession with ethnicity, because in Europe you would never, ever ask about someone's ethnicity due to the horrors of the 1930s and 1940s. So I just thought I'd mention that as an observation, but I will be voting against this.
Mayor Whānau.
Kia ora koutou. I just want to thank Councillor Abdurrahman for bringing this amendment. I will absolutely support him, and certainly hope to see an ethnic advisory group in the future. After seeing this weekend the Citizens' Assembly come together and seeing different Wellingtonians represented in that, it really warmed my heart. And so I'm keen to really explore how many ways we can utilise that way of engaging in the democratic process and our decision making more effectively. So also support looking at options of advisory groups as well, just to see how it all fits together, and just support it being part of the LTP process in general. So I will be supporting this.
Councillor Pennant.
I too would like to thank Councillor Abdurrahman. You don't need permission, right? If you say that's something that needs to be done, then I will support you. And, I did think it was all right to have an in-principle agreement to support this, to give a strong signal. And definitely, if we're going to set up another advisory group, we do need to look at how they can be empowered to be effective. So, and that's why I'd actually like a rewrite of the terms, just to help deliver on some things so that they would be more operational and strategic, so that, there's some real success along the way. Kia ora.
Councillor Abdurrahman, right of reply.
No, nothing much to say. Thank you to you all, and I encourage you all to support this. We've got a lot of hard decisions to make next, including the 80 more than million carry forward. So let's go to that one. Thank you.
Inaine ka potitia te motini.
Can we have a division on that, please? Thanks.
That has passed. Righto, we return back to the substantive debate. Councillors, is there any further debate on the substantive? No? Fantastic. Cool. I will just close out with a short right of reply. To note, colleagues, we've spent quite a lot of time on this paper here today, and the absence of PAG and AAG, as we understand in this climate, not everyone is able to take 2 to 3 hours off of their work time or school time. Nico came and skipped school for us, so we're like incredibly lucky that we even get a few of them tuning in. And I'd just like to remind colleagues the importance of following true and proper process and not creating, midnight emails or policy on the hop, because it allows it's much fairer on our staff and your colleagues to follow a proper process so we can all understand properly what we're voting on. Lastly, just to denote as well how proud I am of the advisory groups, and they've been able to achieve some really fantastic things, including running workshops for CCOs and establishing a youth hub and other amazing standout projects that council gets to take credit for. But I recommend the motions. Cheers. Councillor Free online. We are voting on the annual reports and work plans. You're on mute. Thumbs up. Thank you. Excellent. Ko mana, that has carried. Cheers, colleagues. Item 3.2, the Capital Carry Forward Program and Capital Program Review. No, my Chris Lincoln and Andrea Reeves. Kiti hora o te korero. There's like different names there.
Kia ora, councillors. This paper is a paper that we have produced on an annual basis. It is a procedural paper in nature, recognising that what we're trying to do here is to ensure that our capital expenditure delegations are aligned to when capital expenditure is expected to be undertaken. The council, through its delegations, are required to formally approve any changes to the capital program, and that's why we're bringing this paper to you today. We have had some movements in when we're expecting to deliver on our capital program. A good example of that is the sludge minimisation plant, where we commenced that work in the last financial year, but it didn't ramp up as quickly as we anticipated, and hence we're looking to carry forward the budget over the next couple of years just to recognise that. Our officers have worked through the entire capital program expected for completion in 23-24 to consider whether the projects that are actually outlined in the paper can be delivered and whether the funding is still required. That has been a very thorough exercise. And I think probably the other thing I would note is that any significant changes to the capital program at this point in time would be a deviation from what has already been consulted on and agreed with the community. So we're not changing funding here. All we're doing is aligning this in terms of the appropriate financial years in which we're expecting this to occur. That said, we are going through quite a robust process through the levels of service workshops to consider the capital projects for future years, and that of course will be considered. And the one thing that I would really also like to achieve as part of that LTP process is making sure that we're considering any carry forwards and making sure the adequacy of these carry forwards are included within the LTP budget, not coming to you at a later date. So that's an improvement that the finance team are looking to make sure that rather than have the separate process, that it's really clear during our budgeting process what you're voting for and the timing of that is appropriate. So I will leave it there if there's any questions.
We have two pātai, first one from Councillor Randall.
Yes, I just have a few questions about some of the detail. Wellington Water, it actually said we budgeted 65 million, but in fact they spent 72 million. Does that mean that they actually got more work done than we expected?
I can answer that. So we are still waiting on that report from Wellington Water as to what was actually delivered against the plan.
Yeah, okay. Second question is around St James. There was 1.1 million unbudgeted capital spend. That is, just to confirm, in the previous budget there was a contingency, so that also meant that they spent all their contingency plus 1.1 million?
Correct.
Okay. And lastly, with respect to Let's Get Wellington Moving, there's some carry forward, the breakdown of the carry forward there as item 21 on page 61. Can the total amounts of what each of those items are, as opposed to the amount we're sort of carrying forward, be provided to councillors, just for information?
Do you want the total cost of each of those?
Yeah,
items?
just so that, because $4 million for mass rapid transit, I assume that's the business case because we're not actually building it, but what's the total amount for that?
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Matthews.
Yes, just because you're going to explain it better than me. So councillors understand this money has been budgeted and planned for it is not new expenditure, and almost in its entirety can you explain that?
That's correct. So we're not seeking further funding from you at this point in time. We've already either struck that funding through rates, although recognising this is more about the capital program. It's about the timing of when we're expecting to draw down that debt, or when we are obtaining funding from other sources. So, for example, in the sludge minimisation plant, we get that through IFF funding. So this is just simply a timing thing. We're not seeking new money.
Councillor Pennant.
Thank you. Sorry, I did see my questions through on time, but to the wrong advisor, so apologies. The underspend on CapEx, it's been an ongoing issue. Just remind me what it was in the last couple of years, because we really want to get it spent, because obviously that means we're not doing other things.
Yeah. Did you have any other pātai? Alrighty, I see no for the Is that a question? Yeah. Councillor Abdurrahman.
Wellington Water, did they ask about 10 million for the reserve? Did they ask previously?
For what? They asked for an extra 10
million
OPEX this financial year.
And we declined it?
We provided, I think, 4.5 of that.
So if they overspent, does that mean they were right asking for that money?
No, this is CapEx.
This is CapEx. That's a different financial.
Okay, so the extra 7-something million is on the CapEx, not up.
Yep.
Yeah. Righto. I see no further questions. Thank you, Chris and Andrea. Mā wai te mōtini hi whakataka koutou as the remover for the motion. Councillor Matthews.
I'm moving it.
She's moving
I've got to move it first, John. Don't try and rush me, Deputy. I just want to note this is the sort of the administrative approach. We've heard that we're examining better ways to do this, but it is just about the projects don't necessarily align with the financial year, it is, as we've noted, already budgeted for. It's not extra allocation, but we do need to do this in order to ensure that we continue to deliver on the work that we have already previously agreed to, such as, I think, was the sludge unanimous, the work that we all agree is essential. There may be some work that you don't agree is essential, but we've already contracted and begun work, so the consequence of not supporting this would be to actually add to the cost of these things, because they would take longer and we would need to go into another process, but they would also create, that would also potentially create contractual and risks and reputational risk for us as a council to not do the work as we have agreed and begun. So this is an important part of the governance in order to fund the work that we have agreed to and complete it. I just want to note, I do have, it was with some dismay that the Wellington Water, that the lack of quality information around I have not previously heard of any organisation who was funded to do work like this who would overspend by such a significant amount without seeking prior sign-off for the funding or providing very good information about the work that had been done. So I just think it shows that there is need for continued improvement. I want to thank Councillor Brown for his work continuing to do that work on the Wellington Water Committee, because this seemed highly unusual in my view. But largely, as I say, an administrative piece of work. The money has already been budgeted for, and I would appreciate your support for it. Thank you.
Mawai te whakahounga I tautoko. I understand that Councillor Winiura is going to second. Would you like to speak now?
Tēnā tātou. Hey, obviously, Councillor Matthews did hit it on the head pretty well, but just a couple of points I want to emphasise. Yes, absolutely is an administrative piece of work that is required to keep our capital program ticking over. Our capital program is and has been since a couple of terms ago quite ambitious, and we really need to be all gas, no brakes, and getting it delivered at this point in time. This is a piece of work that is budgeted for. There is no new expenditure, and I just want to speak a little bit about the contributions from the community to this matter. This work involves projects that have been thoroughly consulted on and have reached a stage that the community is happy with. And I think if there's one thing that came out of the Citizens Assembly report, which I cheekily read earlier today, that is the community is very happy for us to play with time more than dollar figures, and that is what this achieves. So I'd just like to encourage you to support this, and I will be intending to support it myself. Cheers.
Councillor Apanowicz, were you on the list to speak? Yep.
Thank you, Chair. This is a situation I'm probably incredibly uncomfortable with. I'm used to carry forwards and rollovers in the public and the private sector where there's a high degree of scrutiny of the numbers, etc. I am concerned the fact that we have a significant capital program over a period of years where, again, we're probably going to be underspent consistently. We've got a significant asset that we have to further budget for, but I have discussed the issue with the CFO and come to a bit of an agreement on some of the way forward, which I'm hoping will be enacted within the next period, around the way we structure our assets and structure our asset program, so we can have a higher level of scrutiny over what we spend our money on. But my discussions have enabled me to be semi-comfortable with voting for this, although I do it with a degree of nervousness.
Councillor Calvert.
Well said, Councillor Apanowicz, because I agree with everything you've said. But the other thing is, this has occurred from over the number of years where we have said we're going to get better. If you look at the Q&A, and I'd like to table the answers, the Q&As for this paper as part of the minutes of this meeting, just so we're quite clear, because this is just filling in information that wasn't in the paper. But I just want to draw your attention to the fact that, we're underspent 18% of the budget, which is not an insignificant amount. And I agree the community wants us to get on and do stuff, but they want to get us to do stuff that matters to them, and that is achievable, because it might look great in an annual plan that what we're going to do, but if we never end up delivering nearly 20%, we're not doing anybody a service on that. So it's, I am concerned when we talk about this being administrative. It's not administrative when you're talking about $90-odd million. And so I think we need to be conscious of that, and that's why I very much support Councillor Apanowich's comments in terms of this. So I do look forward over the next 12 months or so, seeing that we do get better at this, and that we also, when we're thinking about our LTP, that we are actually a little bit of stretch in there, of course, but we are realistic about what we actually can deliver with everything that we know is on the table. So again, like Councillor Apanowicz, I will reluctantly support the recommendations here. Thank you.
Councillor Pennant.
Just to add a ray of sunshine. So this issue of the CapEx underspend goes back to the previous CEO's time at least, but let's be positive. It's getting better. It's trending in the right direction. So look, obviously we need to do better, but at least it's going down, and we just need to, I guess we've got a job here as governors to make sure that these projects keep on track, get done, and then we can move on to the next one. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Just to briefly acknowledge to my colleagues, typically this paper would go to the Finance Performance and AP and LTP, and to confirm to you all that they are still working incredibly closely with John and Rebecca. I te kaikoni here, Councillor Matthews e pairangi ana koe I te whakakoutou. Would you like a right of reply?
Just very briefly, I think that was a good range of views we had there, and that it actually does reflect the political differences that we may have, however, a kind of, also a goodwill, and to continue this work and act in, and I do, have undertaken this process as long-term plan chair for the long-term plan to really look at this kind of balance very carefully, and I think it's been a good week in terms of that information. And I just also really want to thank Councillor Panovich. He's great to work with as deputy chair, and I didn't thank staff, so I want to thank staff for all the work that's gone into this and the continued desire for improvement. Thank you.
E nāne ka pōtitia te Mātinitini. Got a thumbs up from Sarah Free. Awesome. Ko mana, that is carried unanimously. Thank you, members. Righto. Item 3.3 and 3.4, actions tracking and forward work program. We can take this report as read. Stephen, is there any? Sorry, Steve. James, is there? You all blend together.
Thank you.
Sorry, James. Is there any? The family, it's yeah. My apologies, James. Did you have any notes for these reports?
No, I think we can just go straight ahead. Thank you.
Righto. No. Miscommunications. All right. I now put the motion to. Yeah. Okay.
Look, James and all ELT, I've continued to find these action tracking reports a little bit frustrating. They give you information, then they don't give you an update. So, for example, what's been happening with the Māori wardens? The meeting was in March. It's quite a long time ago. So, is it possible just to include some more detail and to seal it off? The Newtown Bowling Club, look, I'm sure the ward councillors know, but again, seems to have been dragging on forever. So, it's just really important to put the most up-to-date information. I also want, can this be done, how long something's been on there, and obviously for some reasons, we might be waiting for a change in government policy, but actually some of the stuff's just hanging around for a long time. Thank you.
Sure, we can take a note of that to add a little bit more detail to some of those, Councillor.
Councillor Randall.
Yes, I just want to support Councillor Pennett's comments. It is, we've got a lot of work on.
Just partai at this stage.
Oh, so it's questions. Oh, yes, sorry. Okay, sorry. Yes, that's fine.
That's all right. All right, with no further questions, we can move on to debate. Councillor Randall, would you like to speak your statements now?
Yes, just in terms of the value of the actions tracking, we as a committee make a lot of meetings. There's a lot of history, and action tracking is the key tool with which we use to keep track of it. And I agree with Councillor Pennett's question/comment that it is a struggle at times, and hopefully the officers can work to make it a little bit more accessible for us, so that we can make sure that the key things are getting done.
He taka hei tau patu, colleagues, any further debate? No, fantastic. And I now ka potitia te motini, I now put the motion. Ko mana. Thank you, colleagues. That has passed unanimously. Ai tēnā kua mutu I te hui, me karaki a tātou. Inuhia, 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 ki te uru tapu nui, kia wātea, kia māma, te nākau, te tinana, te wairoa, e te ara takatū, koe rā e rongo, whakairia a kiki runga, kia wātea, ai rā ko wātea.
Apologies, we can't bring this afternoon's session with Wellington Water forward. It's at 3 o'clock. They're in the Wairarapa currently. So we enjoy the couple of hours of sunshine, and I'll see you online, maybe some of you. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Board memberships.
Yeah.